We're back. Another view here from the C-suite with the CEO of BDM Group, Neil Nelson. And Neil, today I want to delve into these contracts and deals. A lot of times we hear people say they gave me a bad deal. We never hear people say I signed a bad deal or I took a bad deal. And I know that there's the ethical and moral implications. I know, John Hope Bryant spoke on this as well with Jelly Roll, speaking about the music industry.
I'm gonna do a whole video on the supposed conflict with my Jewish brothers and sisters in the music business. People are upset because they're on the wrong end of a contract. If I sign a contract with you and you're not paying attention, my job is to get the best deal I can for me, not the best deal I can for you. Capitalism is a table. There's somebody sitting on one side of the table and somebody sitting on the other. This guy's job or lady's job is to get as much as they can while paying the least. This person's job is to give as little as possible while getting the most. And every good negotiation means everybody leaves the negotiation slightly irritated because nobody got everything they wanted. So don't be upset with the people who are great at contracts when you're not paying attention to a contract. Nobody forced you to sign a contract.
And a lot of times that's the framework for a lot of these predatory deals. What would you say to that?
I think that there's a lot of dimensions to this conversation that Jelly Roll and John Hope Bryant are engaged in. Well, he's kind of piggybacking on what Jelly Roll is saying, and it is John Hope Bryant is absolutely correct when he says that it is your responsibility as an entrepreneur to make sure that you are, as a music artist or entrepreneur, really, to make sure that you read the contracts that you are signing, and that if you are not good at that, you hire an attorney to read the contracts. That's just your responsibility, point blank, period. So there's no debate there. My issue that I take with his comment is when he says that this is just capitalism, and it's just the paraphrasing that it's just is what it is, and that ultimately in these kinds of business dealing and a negotiation in capitalism, if you will, the parties individually have the objective to get as much as they can for as little as possible in the deal. That's a hustle mindset. Now that is prevalent in the world, but it's a hustler mindset, and it's also the kind of mindset that we find not just in the music industry, but all around the world, where you have this extractive relationship between some nations and others, where they go into so-called third world nations, and they extract the resources for as little as possible, and they say, "Oh well, they took the deal." I think that that's bad business, and that's unethical business, and there's principally that's undefendable, and he's defending it as a way, I guess he's trying to nudge or push, scold even these brothers and sisters in the music industry who complain about their deals to pay more attention to the business part of the music business. But I think that in doing so, he may have overstepped the boundary in condoning unethical business practices, which some of these contracts and some of these business dealings reflect.
So I'm glad you spoke about it from an entrepreneurial sense as well, because when we look at, let's just say, Burkina Faso, they kicked out the French government because they're like, this is a bad deal on our gold that we're getting. And, they've had this deal in place for, I guess you could say, I would say centuries, it seems as if, and they were like, we want a new deal, and they structured a new deal. How do you go about navigating through what you consider a fair deal and what some might consider a predatory deal?
Yeah, I think that to talk about what's a fair deal, we're talking about an ethical question, and this is the part where I think John Hope Bryant missed the boat, or missed the point, missed the mark. Is that I expected him as someone who have heard, and I've listened to his videos, and I've heard him in the past talk about religion and spirituality, and therefore moral ethics. There has to be some ethical component to a business deal beyond the black and white of the contract. Is the deal ethical? And the ethical component comes into being when the parties come to the table. Each party, if you believe in building a relational deal versus a transactional deal, you have to say, well, yes, I'm looking out for myself, but I'm also interested in the other party that I'm doing business with, especially if we're going to do business for a long time. Now, if it's just a one-off thing, if it's just transactional, then most people are not going to care. But if you're having if you're entering into a contract with, as a label, with an artist that you hope to have a relationship with over multiple years, as most of these contracts are structured in this way, then you want to also you do want to make sure that they also get a fair deal. Because in business, they talk about this concept of the shadow of the future, that if there is a ongoing relationship with the parties, then both parties actually have, it's in their best interest, I should say, to look out to make sure that whatever deal we come to, you can continue to be a viable, ongoing concern on the other end of this deal, because I'm going to be depending on you partially to show up and be a good partner and be a good productive partner in the relationship. This is where the ethical, moral component arises, right? And the reason you can't just blame the artist, you can't just blame Burkina Faso, as you threw that variable in the equation. You can't just blame the side that got the bad deal, because in many cases where it's a bad deal in the music industry and other areas, it's because one party has so much power that the other party has no viable alternative, meaning that they can distort the structure of the business environment so that you don't get a deal anywhere else. This is the only deal that you're going to get, and we're going to structure it in a way that benefits us. So this moral dimension, this ethical dimension is not being talked about, and I think that's the opportunity for us to have a real meaningful conversation. And, Mr. Bryant also brought in this idea about this Jewish brothers in the music industry, that they're getting a bad rap for the kind of deals that they're structuring with Black artists. Now, I don't know anything about that, but my question would be, in his evaluation of that, are these the same kind of deals that are being made in those communities, right? See, whether it's the music industry, whether it's France, are these the same principles that are being applied when the deals are being made among Frenchmen in France, or when people within different ethnic groups, i.e. the Jewish community or Korean community or Chinese community, are they making the same kind of deals? Or are they making different kinds of deals? Because if they're making different kinds of deals, then it's not just capitalism. Now we're talking about inter-ethnic commerce, in that there's a different kind of cadence and different ways in which people are doing business, intra-ethnic group versus inter-ethnic group. And then again, the moral question still arises, and we can have those conversations about whether or not it's just business as usual, or it's because of you, and we know that you don't have the resources, you don't have the means to go elsewhere, or at least you don't know that you can go elsewhere, and therefore we're going to exploit you as much as possible.
So I like what you said about you don't know you can go elsewhere. And I want to stay on the music industry for a minute, because that seems to be one of those industries where everybody seems to acquiesce to the industry standard, let's call it. So if it's unethical across the board, meaning I'm going to block you, I'm not going. I mean, I heard Irv Gotti say something that I thought was very interesting as it relates to 50 Cent, saying that, you know what, he said, yeah, I'm going to make sure, you can't go in there and do a deal or get a deal, you know what I mean?
Right,
Essentially,
right.
at all. And so I wanted to get your take on the ethical considerations that one must take when they're faced with those type of challenges, when when the pendulum is on your side, so to speak? How do you handle those things in terms of creating a good atmosphere for yourself as it relates to your business dealings?
Yeah, I think it's based on who you think you are, right? All human behavior is contextual and conscious or subconscious, meaning that it's based on your consciousness, I should say. And so when we're talking about capitalism as the context in which we're having these conversations and doing these transactions or these deals, we have to remember that that is not the only descriptor of the people involved. So people are also saying that they're Christians, that they're Muslims, that they're Jews, that they're humanists. And so they're all using all these other descriptors to say that they have special relationships with God and so on and so forth. And they're bringing that into who they think they are. And so we can't separate those things, because at the end of the day, if someone make comments about your business dealings, you're going to say, well, you're doing it because of who I am ethnically or nationally or because of my race. So those variables are always present in the deal. And so we have to say to ourselves, if I'm a good Christian, I can't just do a deal based on the capitalist principles, the profit motive alone. I have to also bring into consideration that if I'm a good Muslim, the Quran has something to say about my business dealings. If I'm a good Jew, the Torah has something to say about my business deals. If I'm a good Christian, the Bible, the gospel has something to say about my business dealings. And those have to be brought to bear. We have to have those conversations. Look, every religion that I've ever studied, going back to the cornerstone of Western religion, whether they admit it or not, which is ancient Kemetic or Mahathian African principles, says basically that you want to take care of those who are disadvantaged, those who are poor, those who are ignorant, those who know less than you do when dealing with them, that you're not exploiting them for your own profit motive, that to do so is evil. It's wrong. Many times when our brothers and sisters are getting to the point of getting their first music or record deal, they're coming from backgrounds that are poverty-stricken environments where they don't have access to resources. So think about someone who's coming from a poor environment, so-called ghetto or the hood, and they don't have any money. And you're promising them or offering them a $500,000 check at one time. Think about the kind of pressure that they are under to do exactly what you ask them to do. When at the very moment that you're waving $1 million in their face, they may have family members who who don't know where the next meal is coming from, who are facing eviction notices. This is the moral dimension of the deal. And so we have to challenge people, both in our communities and other communities, to deal fairly with our people, to do the right thing, to make sure that we uphold some moral code, some ethical code. Now, I know this is unpopular and it's not the common thing, but leaders, a part of being a leader is that you are actually aligning yourself with some ethical code, moral code, and you also encourage and require that other people also live by some moral or ethical code that don't take advantage of the least of these. And this wasn't present in what I heard John Hope Bryant saying, or Jelly Roll.
Yeah, I think that because we oftentimes have been talking about what we need to do for our community, right, in terms of helping to close the wealth gap. Um, and I'm glad that we're talking about the music industry or entertainment industry, because oftentimes many of us think that that's the way, but essentially, Jelly Roll took it a step further in saying that that's really just a loan, right? And it's not designed for you to ever really get out of debt. Now, bringing it a little bit closer to home, even
And that's here's the thing though. that as I watched that video too and watched that clip, he's not lying because most major labels, they're funded on loans. What you don't know is that the major went and got a big loan from somebody else, right? And so, but the question is, no matter what kind of financial structure the agreement is made under, there's still an ethical dimension to the deal, to business. There's an ethical dimension to all human behavior, and commerce and business is no exception. And we should hold people accountable to some basic ethical dimension. When you're a small entrepreneur, small business, or starting out in business, period, and you're getting a big deal from a major corporation, they have an extreme level of power and influence in how that deal gets structured. It's no different in any other industry. It's not just the music industry. And what we see is that some corporations, some businesses, and in many industries don't take into consideration that they are the elephant in the room. They are the Goliath in the room, and you are the small player or the David in the room, and they should consider that what may be just business as usual to them is a life-changing situation for you, and therefore you're under a tremendous amount of pressure and duress, and you're likely to make bad decisions in that kind of context, no matter how good your lawyer is. Because a lot of these guys have lawyers, but the lawyers also go along with it and say, well, it's just the industry.
Industry
standard. Right? If you go out here and hire the average lawyer, no matter how well recommended they are, all they're going to do is check and make sure that it's a standard practice. Yeah. And so you could have an industry that's standard practice that's legal, but it's still immoral and unethical. Slavery was legal, but it was immoral and unethical. Colonization was legal by the colonizer's standard, but it's immoral and unethical. Extractive industries that extract resources from other countries, like in the Congo and elsewhere, and leave those places desolate and in poverty and poverty-stricken, they are legal by international business norms, but they are immoral and unethical. I'm saying let's center the moral and ethical component to the conversation and say that we should hold people morally and ethically responsible for making these kind of bad deals. The number that they introduced, Osei, I listened to the number that the 70-30 deal that he talked about, where you get 500. Let's say you get $1 million at a 70-30 deal, and you're paying for your $1 million loan back out of 30%. It'll take you at least for you to pay off that 30%. Let's say the other side would make 3x, at least 3x what you're paying for, because if you're paying on 30%, let's say it's $1 million, for you to pay off that $1 million, through 30%, the other side is making 3x, close to 3x what you have made, or you're paid back. Right? It's insanity. So the principal could have easily been paid back through their cut. Or just take care of the whole deal. Let's not pay anyone until we paid the principal, the loan back. Yeah. Those are ethical, moral considerations. Let's say, hey, neither you nor I will recoup anything from this deal until the loan is paid back, even plus 5, 10%, 15, 50%. Because once you get that back, then we could both start getting our share of the deal. And so these are extreme scenarios that we're dealing with. And so to not bring up the ethical dimension in this conversation, to me, is a betrayal of any Christian, Muslim, Jewish principle that I've ever heard of. I've read about.
Well, I want to bring this home, Neil. I've been fortunate enough to be in the room with you on some deals, and I appreciate you bringing up the spiritual side of it. And I wanted to get your thoughts about in closing on the spiritual component of just doing good business, creating good deals. Right? I know that Puffy or Diddy was notorious for giving out bad deals. I mean, and this is
Mm-hmm.
common knowledge, right? Unfortunately, you know, for where he's sitting now, and I say this just across the board, just you know, his deals in general. Um, you know, I wanted to maybe get your thoughts on the karmic nature of this. You know, what I'm saying this whole principle in terms of doing good business. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Look, my approach towards the world is that I believe in African spiritual values, that they are the cornerstone of Western spiritual religion. We don't talk about that part a lot, but they
Another
all of
video, another video, Mia.
look, the moral basis of Christianity is Judaism, and of Judaism is African spiritual systems, including Islam. It's also African spiritual systems. And we can go back and we can cite our sources, right? If someone wants to challenge me on this. And the core idea is about judgment at the end of life. That when this life is over, what happens to your soul? That a soul exists. It's the African concept, the idea of a soul, and that it survives the death of the physical body. And that there are certain ideas and principles that one should live by in order to be vindicated after death and to gain eternal life. These ideas predate Western religion, including Judaism. So these are borrowed concepts, and they're borrowed but not well practiced in the West. And so we've never seen a society where we've not seen anywhere as a wholesale where people practice these ideas, especially in business. And this is where the litmus test is for whether or not you really believe what you say you believe in, is if you're willing to forego profit for your principles, for your moral, spiritual principles. When I come into business dealing with people, I say, I'm willing to invest first. I'm willing to show goodwill first. I'm willing to give you money, music executive person. I'm willing to give you money and put money in your pocket and see what you do. See if you will reciprocate, because I believe in reciprocity. That's another African principle, by the way. I believe in giving back to those who give to me, and so I give it to people to see if they're going to give back. I believe in pursuing what I want for myself, for you as well. These are principles that anyone who's done business with me know that I believe I practice this. Also keeping my word and doing what's right. And that if I learn something new about what I did was wrong, I'm going to change my position. Oh, I was wrong about that. This is where we should go with this. Let's make reparation. Let's repair the damage that we've done. The point I was making earlier, Osei, about the numbers, if you get a deal for $1 million, if you to pay off that deal within the 70-30 deal structure, where you get 30%, it's being paid out of the 30%, as Jelly Roll pointed out, it means that someone else had to make $2 to $3 million on the 70% of the deal. Roughly, for easy math, if 1/3 of it is going towards paying $1 million, then 2/3 is going into your pocket, in somebody else's pocket. So the label is making two-thirds as much as what you're making profit, while they're saying that your part is being paid through the deal, through the 30%. I mean, that's if usury was evil, this is the mother lode of usury. I mean, this is wickedly diabolical. And so when I met and talked to people in the music industry, and you've been in those rooms with me, Osei, I said, why are you Negroes so committed to music industry norms if it don't work for you?
Yeah.
I would challenge every music industry norm because it's unethical, it's immoral. It goes against the commercial laws in every religion. Islam, Judaism, Christianity is against usury. We should have that conversation with folks in the music industry and any other industry where these kind of norms are being practiced, because they are unethical
We should
and
invite some
they're
of those people.
anti-God.
to the C-suite so we can have that conversation, Neil.
Nope. And
So,
so we're having them now. We're having them now so that we can spur conversation. Because when I hear people in the music industry talking about business, I never hear them bring up the ethical piece of it. I never hear them talk about the moral piece of it. And
heard that.
because they themselves don't behave ethically to others,
Yeah.
the way the music industry is operates in entertainment in general, in media in part too, is they say, "Hey, it's been done to me, so I'm going to do it to you." And so it's not do unto others as you would like them to do unto you. Their mantra, they've taken that goodly word and turn it upside down and say, "I'm going to do unto you what's been done unto me." Well, that's a recipe for disaster and evil. And we see where it ends up with people like no call no name, where people end up in bad places following that
Yeah.
kind of uh, inverse maxim of righteousness. The righteous maxim, the do unto others as you like them to do unto you, is a principle that first been recorded in human history, happened in ancient Africa, in the story of the eloquent commoner or peasant. He echoes that, and that finds its way in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and in Western moral philosophy.
Mm.
We as African people have to bring back to the world moral sensibility, ethical um, dimension in both in the political and economic domain, because they have been absent. When we see people uh, take away the very basic fabric of life for people in political decisions and policies in this country and around the world, and no one is talking about the moral dimension of these things, the world is in crisis. And I think we have to remember that we don't have to accept what is just because it's normal. We can say that it should be better, and we have a basis for it to be better. And I think the basis for it to be better is a spiritual, moral, ethical dimension.
On that note, I think you brought it home, Neil. Spiritual side is what we need to make sure that we really are practicing more of in our business dealings. The ethical aspects of it, would you say?
Yeah, I think I would sum it up by saying this. Look, if you're in business, it is your responsibility to make sure that your business interest is well represented and that you have the kind of representation legally and otherwise, management and otherwise, to secure your interest. That's for sure. However, and most importantly, we as a community and so-called leaders in our community need to foster and encourage and hold accountable people to behave on a high ethical standard, high ethical and moral standard. And that ethical and moral standard is to do unto others as you would like them to do unto you, not just try to get the most you can get out of a business deal, because that's not sustainable. We all end up in hell. We create a hellish environment with that kind of approach towards business.
Yeah, man, mic drop moment, Neil. We'll basically say not to do to others what was done to me, because you said that they've turned the term upside down, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
the scriptures say that they have made the word of God of no avail
that.
by inverting it, and so
Yeah,
they have turned do unto others as you'd like them to do unto you into I'm gonna do unto you what they did to me.
yeah. Well, good to know Rome is falling, and a lot of these things have crumbled or seem to be crumbling, and the playing field is a lot more level. But very insightful conversation per usual, man. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to our next one as usual as well. So we'll make it happen.
Indeed.